That's my name. Don't wear it out.
Sarah.
That's my name. Don't wear it out.
What's really striking about this video is the smugness we hear in Sarah Boone's voice.
Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
That's on you.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
It's on you.
Sarah.
That's on you. That's on you.
Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
Oh. That's what I feel like when you ching on me.
Sarah.
So she's clearly very drunk, slurring her words, saying, that's what I feel like when you cheat on me. But she's also very smug. This being, of course, the video where Sarah Boone is taunting her boyfriend George while he pleads to be let out of the suitcase.
You should probably shut up.
So the statements from Sarah Boone have this combination of smugness and wrath that is almost bizarre. For wrath and cruelty to be so simultaneous with self-righteousness and smugness. But it is the same smug wrath that we will see from Sarah Boone in her text message exchanges with George and throughout the investigation and even throughout the trial and conviction. So I want to dig into what exactly this is and where it might come from. I'm Andrew Vandervaart, a psychiatrist and neuroscientist, and any opinions expressed in this video are purely my own. Now let's talk about Sarah Boone, the suitcase killer. So the suitcase video is from February 2020. It was discovered by investigators on the phone of Sarah Boone. Sarah Boone, of course, called 911 the morning after this video was taken to her home in Winter Park, Florida, where she reported that her boyfriend, George Torres Jr., was unresponsive, having been trapped for hours in a zipped-up suitcase. She would claim that they had been playing a game of hide and seek, during which George had hid inside this suitcase. She would marginally amend this story throughout the course of the interrogations and trial, trying to account for the fact that she was actually the one who zipped it up and left him there, despite him saying things like, I can't breathe. But ultimately, she would never stray too far from the idea that this started out as some kind of playful thing and just went wrong. Now, the relationship between George Torres and Sarah Boone was always rocky, to be sure. With many thanks to the website Your True Crime Library, we have some helpful exhibits, including excerpts from the 100 pages of text exchanges between Sarah Boone and George, which were in evidence during the trial, and also a timeline of the relationship, including police involvement. As you can see, the timeline actually starts before the digital records pick up. So they had started dating in 2016, and then one of their earliest incidents with law enforcement involvement was in 2018, July. This was Sarah Boone calling 911 saying that George kicked her in the face. However, he said that he was kicking her off while she was strangling him. The police could not actually determine who was the primary aggressor here, and neither would ultimately press charges against the other. So that's in 2018, right? Then in 2019, we have both the record of messages picking up, and we also have signs that their toxic dynamic is picking up as well. So you could consider the messages from May of 2019. George is asking Sarah here, where is my clippers in the gray box? Sarah yells, dumpster, like you. So is your 2 shirts. No more Rick and Morty. And George says, okay. Lucas, her son, cried when he saw the adventure fund was gone. Thank you. No wonder you're out. F off. And then we have just a text barrage continuing from there, where Sarah is essentially screaming at George, get the F out of my life. Good for nothing. Dumpster diver. That's what you are. Right? So one of these absolute barrages. But there's a definite air of condescension and thereby self-righteousness, in the sense that Sarah is putting herself far above George. Calling him trash is sort of condescending by its very nature, right? Dumpster like you, also calling him a dumpster diver. So these texts are seething with disdain, right? Anger, but also disdain and contempt. She has this tone that is dismissive, cutting, and ultimately condescending. So the screaming then continues. So she does one round of a barrage, ending here in good for nothing dumpster diver. That ends around 11:49 a.m. She picks it up again 1 hour later, starts saying some of this. I really don't understand why she's saying rats, pork chops, beans. I don't know what exactly this is referencing, but seems somehow related to dumpster stuff. Rats are in dumpsters, maybe. Then F all of you. She says to George, your firstborn is a joke. Mean, selfish, get all of you. Get the F out of my life. She picks that back up. And out of Lucas's life too, bad influence. Right, so all of these people need to get out of Sarah Boone's life because they are below her. They are dumpster material. The implication is she is above them. That's why she would have this kind of condescending tone, right? And so this is where we can see this smug wrath emerging. The wrath is there, but so too is the smugness. George is trying to just disengage. When she's saying, get the F out of my life, he's saying, I am, as you can see, go drink your life away. Because he's trying to highlight, it sounds like, trying to highlight that she is under the influence of alcohol, which I imagine is the case. This is kind of the quality of the text. It's almost this screaming slurring that does look like alcohol-induced, right? But the smugness comes out at things like this. So when she's talking about how her implication here is that bad influence, George is a bad influence, your kids are too, yuck. Your kids are too, yuck. So the idea is George's kids are also gross and a bad influence on her and her son. She says, shucks, I only have one. Beats your three together. Of course, she's making typos here. I think the intoxication that George is implying is correct. But shucks, I only have one. Beats your three together. Then adding again, yuck, gross. She's so disgusted, right? But she's also smug. Shucks, I only have one. George here is replying, I love that guy, about Lucas, and then saying, you're the one that kicked me out. Sarah's just digging back in. Finally, i.e. finally, I kicked you out. Get your shot together and check me out in 2 or 3 months. Hope you're there. So a little bit of an olive branch maybe, unless I find someone better. She pulls it back. Then she's trying to correct her typo. So she said, get your shot together. Check me out in 2 or 3 months unless I find someone better. Corrects it to shit, which is what she meant. Get that together. George, are you serious, Sarah? That's what happens. Right, so this is one heck of a text fight. It's going on all day on May 30th, all day on May 31st. Nearly all day of Sarah yelling over text at George, insulting him, right? Seeming to break up with him, accusing him of taking things. So then the topic kind of shifts to this notion that George took things from Sarah. He is denying that. He's saying, I didn't take anything that wasn't mine. I'm coming with other people who can verify I don't have anything of yours, right? But at the same time, George saying, I really need my birth certificate, right? I don't have your shit, Sarah. I need my birth certificate. So then 2 or 3 days after that, we see Sarah saying, George, call me. Then telling him to come. Then asking this other person, Mo, to get George to please come over to visit her. Then saying, really want to see him. Really want to see him. But then saying, not pursuing after 12. So she spends this morning, that she wakes up this morning, she seems to really want to see George. Then she tells him, I'm not going to keep pursuing after noon. Then says, ever again. Then she gets more desperate. Please call. Come over. I'll come get you. Come over, please. I need a super hug. Hugs? Please. Need. You. So there's this period where after berating him, insulting him, telling him to get the F out of her life, a few days later, she's desperate to see him. It seems she doesn't get a response that day, and then she says, look what you made me do, and she's ripped up his birth certificate here. All up to you now, big boy, she says, tauntingly, smugly. He says, or maybe your mom will for you, right? So she's sort of saying, it's all up to you now. You're going to have to figure out how to get a birth certificate, or maybe your mom will help you because you're such a boy. you need your mom's help. That's how I'm taking that. Same sort of condescending indignation from Sarah. George says, wow, that's really childish. Sarah says, but effective. George says, yeah, I see what you're doing. Did Lucas leave? Her son, she said, I'm watching shadows. Be gone for good, minus birth certificate. So we see this, what we see here is this oscillation between vulnerability and vindictiveness. There's this brief window where we see how vulnerable, how much Sarah wants to see George, right? How much she seems to need him suddenly. And then we get her cold and calculated reaction to him not, I guess, dropping everything a few days after the breakup and coming over. So it's this kind of extreme reaction and this attempt to maintain control over that vulnerability, to kind of maintain a position of emotional control, being able to somehow put herself back in the smug and self-righteous point, like, oh, look what you made me do. Now you'll have to deal with it, big boy. So what is this? What is this smug wrath? What exactly is smug wrath? Well, it's not a clinical term, but it's a way to describe this kind of toxic emotional state we see from Sarah. You know, this state that she seemed to inhabit for much of her life. It seems to be the sort of safe position for her emotionally. Smug and angry. So it's these two distinct yet intertwined emotions. It's the need to be righteous and superior while also having this seething and vindictive anger. So the wrath seems to lead to this desire to hurt and humiliate, whereas the self-righteousness leads to this need to always be in the moral high ground, the need for control and a refusal to see her own flaws. And that part is important. I would say that for some reason, Sarah Boone has this presupposition that she is flawless, or for some reason she has to be flawless. She has to be without blame, morally perfect in her worldview. Now, the issue is, it's impossible for anyone to be flawless, but it's all the more difficult if you have a raging alcohol addiction and an extreme emotional sensitivity to any kind of perceived rejection, right? So what happens, so when she has this extreme sensitivity to rejection that makes her rip up someone's important documents and taunt him about it because he didn't respond to texts earlier that day, to justify that is pretty difficult, right? And if you have to justify the level of rage that will come with believing, rightly or wrongly, that your partner is cheating on you, and by the way, it's after you've drank a fifth of liquor, well, you're going to have your work cut out for you when it comes to justifying whatever you do in that state, right? And so a lot of what we see with Sarah Boone and a lot of what makes her bizarre is this insistence that she was justified at times when anyone with a modicum of insight would say, look, I made a mistake, you know, like I had too much to drink. I did some things I shouldn't have. I said some things she shouldn't have. It seems like her whole life is having too much to drink and doing things she shouldn't, but then also needing to justify that they were all actually for good reason. Because remember, in her mind, she cannot make a mistake. So if it looks to you like she made a mistake, the problem must be in the way you're seeing it. So let's look, for example...
Like having a good time with one another, but we're drinking, we had a bottle of wine last night. Okay. Fine. So then it's like, we decided to play hide and seek, right? Okay. So he gets in the suitcase, okay? Who is this guy? That's my ex-husband, my former husband. How did he live here with you guys? No. I called him over here. Okay, okay. I didn't know what to do. Okay. I didn't know what to do. Okay. So then he came over here. Here, let's talk in private, okay? I called you guys. Mm-hmm. Okay. But then I fell asleep. Okay. You're okay. I wasn't here. I'm just trying to figure out what happened. I fell asleep, so I don't know if he suffocated or like had an aneurysm or a heart attack or what. What kind of medical conditions does he have? None that I know of. Nothing that you know of. None that I know of. Take any medicine? No. All we had was a bottle of wine. Literally, just a bottle of wine. Okay. Doing puzzle artwork. Then we decided to play hide and seek. Mm-hmm. That's all that happened. Okay.
Nothing bad happened, right? Because nothing bad could ever happen. Look, she didn't do anything bad, right? That's like her honest emotional experience right now, because she's so in denial that she could ever do anything wrong. She's like, yeah, I did. So it doesn't even cross her mind, for one, that it's bizarre that she called her ex-husband before she called emergency services. For the larger part, it doesn't strike her as questionable that she zipped him up in a suitcase and fell asleep. You know, that she didn't mean anything by it.
It's natural. You're nervous. You have your anxiety. You're scared, right?
I don't know how to explain it to you.
It's okay. You don't have to.
I don't know how to.
Here she can't even admit that she's anxious or scared, despite these circumstances. You know, you wake up and the person you're dating is dead. The police officer's like, you're having anxiety and you're scared, right? She's like, I don't even know how to explain it.
It's natural. You're nervous. You have your anxiety. You're scared, right?
I don't know how to explain it to you.
It's okay.
She says, I don't know how to explain it to you. But she doesn't say right. She doesn't say right to anxiety and fear, because it can't be that. That could imply that she did something wrong. And we know that's not true, right?
Well, I thought by not giving it up all the way, it would be okay. My plan was not to leave him in the
And what was
suitcase.
your plan?
Waiting for him to come upstairs.
So the other thing she does is that, so remember, because she can never be wrong, she can never have made a mistake, she's created this world where she is always the righteous one. And so, again, if you say anything to suggest that she might have had ill intentions, that she was anything other than righteous, she feels almost sorry for you, because you don't understand how righteous she is. And so that leads to this kind of smugness where she's like, oh, you poor thing, you don't understand.
This
You
video,
explain it to us. We're listening.
I just did. Like, we were playing, and then, like, I thought it was... My plan was not to go upstairs and go to sleep. My plan was not to... He'll be up here any minute.
See, she's like, how do you not get that? How do you not get, this was my plan, it wasn't to kill him. Hello? Right? That's honestly how she's acting. Is like, I didn't think I was going to fall asleep. Let's watch more of this interrogation.
Do the facial recognition.
Okay, so he doesn't know the password and he doesn't have the facial recognition. No, he is the only other person that would use your phone, I'm
Yes.
assuming, other than...
Well, Lucas.
Right. But Lucas wasn't there Sunday. Right. So, to your recollection, no videos on Sunday?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So this is good. This is the moment where she's going to learn that there were videos on her phone that investigators discovered, right? So first they establish, does anyone else use your phone? Could anyone else have used your phone on this particular Sunday? She basically says, no, unless George had used my Face ID to unlock it. So she basically implicates herself as like, anything recorded with the phone would have been me recording it, right?
I get my phone. I maybe took a picture of them, the two of Tess and the dogs. And George and them dancing, but I mean, it's just Tess.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I have something that I want to show you that we found, and it was from your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see it?
If you need to move it around, go ahead.
I wish there was better quality here. I wish I could zoom in and really see her face reacting to this discovery. So she's seeing the video of the suitcase.
For everything you've done to me. For everything you've done to me.
Your battery's about to die.
Shut it down.
Oh, okay.
Let me...
So now, in fairness, the battery was about to die on the laptop. But if you were in Sarah Boone's position and you were getting shown this evidence of the video you recorded taunting him while he's trapped in the suitcase, would you say your battery's about to die? See, she still needs to be in a position of superiority. Even when she's absolutely caught. She's absolutely cooked right now, as they say.
No, I don't remember that.
No, I don't remember that.
For everything you've done to me.
Your battery's about to die.
Shut it down.
Excuse me, your battery's about to die. Maybe you should check that. So, I mean, I think it's isolation of affect a little bit right now. So it's a sort of real time case of guarding yourself against something that you can't confront. You know, she can't deal with this right now, and so she'll isolate all of her emotional reaction to the actual content of the video and just say, "Oh, your battery's about to die." But it's telling that what she goes towards something where she can like be scolding or chiding someone, and you didn't plug your laptop in. It's still smug. It still comes off as smug to me. Even this little sort of coincidental moment, you know, she really seems to occupy that smug ground.
Oh.
Let me.
The battery doesn't last very long.
It used to last a lot longer than that. I don't know what happened.
Okay. Let me just grab something.
All right.
The guy's like, yeah, my battery used to last longer. Sure, buddy. Yeah, I'm sure it never does this. No, I'm getting
You
smug.
had a look on your face when she asked you if you've ever done that before. You looked kind of shocked and.
No.
Okay, but why did you say it like that? Like.
I don't think you all understand who I am.
Okay. Well, tell me.
I mean, I've always been a straight-A student. I am an outstanding mother to my son.
Okay.
I excel at everything.
I don't think you understand who I am. I've always been a straight A student. That's what she leads with there, by the way. I've always been a straight A student. I've always been perfect, in other words. And so it seems you don't understand that I'm perfect. I've always been perfect. And yet you're implying that I've done something wrong. So I feel sorry for you, right? Because you don't understand. All of that is what I'm hearing from Sarah Boone right now, okay? I don't think you understand me. I've always been a straight A student. Now, that fact that she's always been a straight A student, incidentally, there's a forensic psychologist who testified at trial who noted that Sarah Boone had narcissistic traits, though not the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. The psychologist said narcissistic traits, yes. Asked for an example of how she ascertained that these traits, the forensic psychologist said that on her interview with Sarah Boone noted that she had always had straight A's. She'd always been a straight A student, seemed eager to relay that information, which I guess in the context of this forensic interview struck the psychologist as a narcissistic sort of trait, wanting to say that quickly. At any rate, in my mind, that attaches to this identity she's built for herself. I'm a model citizen. I'm a straight A student. I'm flawless. I'm morally perfect. I'm infallible. And maybe we'll come back to that forensic psychologist.
I would not do that.
You wouldn't lock somebody in a suitcase?
Well, I didn't completely lock it. I mean, I opened it with one finger. I left enough in there for him to get out.
Okay.
And I wasn't planning on going upstairs and going to sleep.
Okay.
But you did, for the record.
No, it's just the way you said it.
You guys are scaring me.
Why?
Well, we just want you to watch this. This came from your phone. Don't you want to know what's on it?
Yes, please. Is it long? Because I don't know how much I can take.
No.
I don't know how much I can take.
I don't know how to find her.
Do I have to watch this? I continuously throw up. I don't sleep. I don't want to see it, if that's okay.
Well, it's on your phone, and you can either explain it or we take it for what it is.
Yeah. We're just trying to give you the opportunity to tell us what's going on. That's it.
It's that long?
2 minutes.
For everything you've done to me. For everything you've done to me. You.
That's you, your voice.
Stupid. That's my name. Don't wear it up.
I don't want to watch it, please.
Last time we talked to you, you had said that you put him in the suitcase, he had 2 fingers hanging out. And you
I
went to
flipped him
bed.
over. I flipped him over, and that's where it was.
There's 2 different videos and a still picture where, yeah, it shows you flipping him in different positions and him.
So first of all, I mean, she starts by saying, I don't know if I can watch this. I don't want to get a stomach ache. I don't know if I can take this. How long is it? And then at a certain point in the video, she says, I don't want to watch this. I can't watch this. All of that, to me, is acting like she is being put upon by having to watch what she did, right? Yet she's somehow the victim in this situation in her mind. Like, why are you making me watch this? Why are you making me watch this video of the thing that I did? And of course, that's the sort of the Lucy Letby shadow kind of idea. Like once I'm actually being confronted with something I can no longer deny, it's activating this part of my brain that I'd suppressed, and it feels like I'm being traumatized. But here with Sarah Boone, I think it's a pattern of insisting on being the victim as part of her ploy to always be righteous. So Sarah frames herself as the aggrieved party, and that is how she can justify being the righteous one, right? She can justify escalating her actions by saying George is the villain. I am always right by being mean to George because he is making me do it. Right. So she has this worldview where so long as she is the victim, then anything she does is justified. And she needs everything she does to be justified because she needs to be righteous all the time. She needs to be morally perfect in her mind. She needs to be perfect in her own mind. You know that the other thing about that kind of stance of this smug wrath is that it's self-perpetuating. Right. So when she's framing herself as this aggrieved party and she's justifying her texts, let's say, becoming more and more cutting, more vindictive, more dehumanizing, what's that going to elicit from George? Well, it's going to elicit him sort of acting in line with what she's accusing him of. Like, he's going to be kind of dismissive. He's going to kind of reject her because she's acting in a way that basically guarantees rejection. Right? Like, remember, May 31st, she's yelling at him, get the F out of my life. She's insulting his kids. She's insulting him and his whole family, calling them garbage. 2 days later, she's saying, come over. Guess what? He doesn't come over. And then she says, see, I was right. I was right all along about George. He doesn't care about me. I'm the victim again. I'm right again, and I'm the victim again. Now, in this courtroom, of course, she's somehow going to picture herself as the victim being put in this situation where she's forced to watch this video. Emotionally, she's going to still put herself in that victim role, but it's going to be harder to cognitively justify in this case.
You can't breathe, and you're saying
This is upside down. So in order for him to have gotten into it,
they're basically saying, look, the suitcase was in one orientation. Now it's flipped so that it's actually upside down. There's no way he did that himself. So they're further saying you were actually moving him around in the suitcase, fully closed suitcase.
right, it was flipped up normal, like as if you're packing something. So this is upside down.
Guys, this is killing me right now.
So this image is upside down.
Guys, this is killing me right now, she says. What are you doing to poor Sarah?
And then this small video that occurred 11 minutes later, it's flipped over the other way, closer to your dining room table.
Okay.
Now he's obviously still in there. So he didn't, how did it go from the back to the front?
I flipped it. My plan was not to go upstairs and go to sleep.
11:12, that's what you did.
Yeah.
But not intentional.
No, you told me you went upstairs because you were
Stop
getting ready
here.
for bed.
So still her stance now is, let me correct you on this. Let me set you straight. It's just what a powerful need to justify yourself, right? That's just what I'm observing.
Okay.
Please understand that. My intention was not to leave him in there.
But you went upstairs thinking that he could get himself
Yes.
out, but the video shows
That's why I
at no
told
point
you.
can I see his fingers. And
He'll be
it
up here
looks
any
like-
minute.
And then 30 minutes later, he didn't show.
And he's telling you
And I
he
didn't
can't
wake
breathe.
up.
Do you think
not able
he's
to get
joking?
out.
You told me he was laughing, and
We were
the
before.
video, there's no
When we
laughing.
first got in there, both of us were.
So how long was he in there for? Like, this video is at 11:12 when it starts, so was he in there for like a long time prior to you recording this?
No.
So it goes from funny to no longer funny,
But I
you're the
didn't-
only one laughing.
But I didn't think that he was, like, panicky. Like,
So pushing up on a suitcase saying, Sarah, 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 I can't breathe.
George has done that in the past before, too, where it's just like he thinks that he's woe is me kind of thing, where it's like,
He's never been locked in a suitcase.
No.
Wow. So he's done that. He's cried wolf in the past. He's done things like tried to get out of a locked suitcase. It's this woe is me act. So talk about some projection there. She's acting like George plays the victim. George is always doing this woe is me. Oh, I can't get out. Oh, you're hurting me, Sarah. She's talking like he often does that, and that's why she wasn't taking it seriously when he was banging on the top of the suitcase or saying I can't breathe. She says he does this woe is me kind of thing. Now, in the text messages, do we ever see him sort of playing the victim? I don't think so. I think what he does is he just shuts down and he disengages, but he never says, you treat me poorly. Right? There's a lot from Sarah about how awful George is. Right? Here's like a note. This is a note in Sarah's phone where she seemed to have been recording all of George's transgressions. So here she's written, who's Christine? Facebook? Going to meet up? Calling her beautiful? These other Facebook comments he made. Sending pictures of yourself? Telling her good morning? Right, so she actually writes that in a note, and then we'll see her write at least this draft of how he's basically emotionally cheating on her, at least on Facebook. We used to have fun and you say nice things to me. Now it's dead like you are to me. Thank you for letting me see your true colors. Telling someone else that I've discovered everything George ever did wrong. Tell him that I know. Still cursing at the whole family, calling them names, insulting them. Right. And look, legitimately, I think Sarah Boone felt very hurt by George. I think an unfortunate thing about her coping strategy, though, is that she was also acting in a way to essentially guarantee her abandonment or her rejection. And then she gets enraged at the fact that she is abandoned or rejected. But at any rate, George, I've never once seen any evidence of him saying, woe is me, or you're being mean to me. He basically says like, yeah, okay, good. Most of what he says is along the lines of, okay. Or like, at one point saying, I love that guy about her son, right? You're the one that kicked me out. Okay, he said one thing, which again, he's not saying I'm so put upon, you kicked me out. He's just saying you're the one that kicked me out. So anyways, in this video, her saying that he plays the victim, to me is an absolute projection of what she does, okay? Now, the forensic expert will say,
of that exposure to trauma.
So I'm not going to watch this whole video, but essentially there's this forensic psychologist, Julie Harper, who took the stand during the trial of Sarah Boone and said, there's no diagnosis of a personality disorder here because certain things could be explained more so by a primary psychiatric diagnosis, which was post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Now, I did not examine Sarah Boone. I'm not going to make a diagnosis, and who am I to question this forensic psychologist? I would just say that in my experience as a psychiatrist and in the psychological literature, the common experience of victims of trauma, I would say, is to actually experience guilt or shame. Many victims of abuse will internalize this blame, this sense of being responsible somehow for being mistreated, even when to others that's obviously illogical, but it's like this idea of survivor's guilt. People will feel guilty even if there's absolutely nothing they could have done to have prevented some horrible thing. But that's just something that the mind seems to do automatically is it creates this kind of guilt and shame. And so for people with trauma disorders, the guilt and shame part is often something that takes a lot of work to overcome. It's something that they're really tormented by, this sense of shame, but ultimately do want to get better, want to work through the guilt and shame so that they can move on with their lives. But I would say that guilt shame is a pretty stark contrast to the kind of righteous indignation we see from Sarah Boone, right? It's a sharp contrast to the idea of ressentiment, right? I mean, the kind of self-righteousness is like the opposite of internalized guilt or shame, right? Now, you could say it's so suppressed, that her trauma symptoms are so suppressed, so walled off. But to me, it looks more like splitting. What she's doing looks like extreme reactions to perceived abandonment, okay? Looks like seeing the world as all good or all bad, seeing herself as all good. But these are just psychological mechanisms I'm speculating about. This is not a diagnosis. Let's see some more clips. Where's the...
So I felt safe enough to turn it back over. It wasn't happening anymore.
You went back to the video and the couch?
I did, yes.
And you saw the second video?
Yes.
The 22-second, and he's right side up again?
Yes.
And you hear him say, Sarah?
Yes.
Had you left enough room for him to get out? Zipper to zipper?
Yes, that's how his hand was trying.
That suitcase has two zippers, doesn't it? And they meet at various places along the line?
Correct.
How much room, when you flipped it over, done to you?
For the split-second reaction that I had, I happened to see that, and I grabbed the baseball bat and was trying to poke his hand, leaning up against the dining room table right there.
How far was the bat from the suitcase?
Now, I will note that in the trial, when Sarah Boone took the stand in her own defense, she seemed to have a much clearer memory of that night than she'd had in the interrogation. She went from not even remembering that there was a video, seeming shocked when she saw the video that first time in the interrogation, to now being able to recount sort of blow by blow details of the incident. But just something I noticed, right?
3 feet, 2 feet?
Was his hand still out of the suitcase?
Yes.
And was he getting out of the suitcase?
He very much was trying, yes.
And so what did you do?
For the split-second reaction that I had, I happened to see that, and I grabbed the baseball bat and was trying to poke his hand to go back in, to please don't break through, please. So I hit.
Okay. Go ahead, tell me.
So what she'll say here is that while it went, originally it was all fun.
And it just got it got very heated very quickly, and he continued to push on the suitcase and knew the tone, and we ended up, I guess, arguing back and forth with one another, and it was the things that he was saying very much frightened me, and cursing at me and threatening me.
So she'll ultimately make the point that she put him in the suitcase and even filmed him being in the suitcase to sort of make this point to him that this is when she felt safe. That because of the way he'd treated her, the only time she felt truly safe was when he was sort of constrained or confined in this way. And then she'll say, in the moment, she was very scared of what he would do if he came out of the suitcase.
And my fear was that he was going to break out of the suitcase knowing that it was a broken suitcase. And his hand started to come through. His hand started to come through this way. And so I shook the suitcase. Trying to get his hand to go back in, shaking it, and telling him that, please stop doing this. Please stop doing this to me. Please stop doing this to me.
So his hand actually got out of the suitcase?
Yes.
And you went to the suitcase?
Yes.
She was telling him, please stop doing this to me, when he was in the suitcase with maybe his hand coming out. According to her, his hand was coming out. I don't really believe that his hand was coming out, but remarkable being able to be the victim even in this situation.
Yes.
Did that force his hand to go back in?
No.
So you're shaking it. Were you shaking it to try to get the suitcase, his hand back in?
Yes.
How long did you shake it?
I don't know.
But his hand was still out.
Yes.
Was he trying to get out?
Forcefully, yes.
Was he angry at you?
Yes.
Were you in fear?
Always.
If he would have gotten out of the suitcase, what would he have done to you?
Like he used to tell me, he probably would have made me unrecognizable, or I would have lost my life.
Did you lose the grip on the suitcase?
Yes.
Where was the bat in relation to the suitcase?
It was leaning up against the dining room table, right there.
How far was the bat from the suitcase?
3 feet, 2 feet.
Was his hand still out of the suitcase?
So there was a baseball bat just a few feet away from the suitcase. Thankfully, because she felt very threatened when he was in there.
Yes.
And was he getting out of the suitcase?
He very much was trying, yes.
And so what did you do?
For the split-second reaction that I had, I happened to see that, and I grabbed the baseball bat and was trying to poke his hand to go back in to please don't break through, please. So I hit his hand.
Did you hit the outside part of his hand?
Yes.
We've seen the photographs of his left hand. Did you cause the bruising there?
I'm guessing yes.
Now, you've seen the...
So he had multiple bruises from being hit with a baseball bat when he was inside the suitcase, right? And now her explanation is that she was sort of doing almost like a pool cue to get his hand back in?
It's a youth bat?
Yes, I bought it for my son.
Is this the bat you used?
Yes.
And you said you poked him with it?
Yes, I kind of pushed, like I held it with the skinny part here, and then
So the grip here,
prodded at it, yes.
you grabbed it with both hands here,
Yes.
and then
She tried to prod his hand back into a suitcase in self-defense.
the barrel of the bat, the big part of the bat is here.
Correct.
And
With a baseball bat.
into the different areas of the suitcase?
I started with his hand, and his hand, he was still trying to get out. He was still trying to do
I started with his hand, so I guess she's sort of implying that she did hit him elsewhere with the baseball
that.
bat.
So I started to push on the suitcase around it, hoping to have his hand.
Okay, so then she started pushing on the suitcase. So not hitting the suitcase with the bat, pushing on it elsewhere in other ways to try to keep him contained in there because he would have come hurt her. Okay, great. Really makes sense. See, she's got me acting smug, I feel like. It's contagious. I also feel like she was sort of coached in terms of how she acts on the stand. I mean, her statements are still sort of ridiculous attempts to justify this thing, but her mannerisms are less self-righteous and smug on the stand than she was with police. I mean, I think the body cam times you really see.
She has it? Yeah. Okay.
Come and kill me.
Okay, so maybe the last time?
Now I'm not lying. Under the jail.
He's going.
Under the jail.
Okay. We're all set then.
What else do you, I could show you bloody fingers and bloody faces and black eyes and...
I know, it sounds like you guys need to probably not hang out with each other anymore.
Hello.
I know.
That's
I know,
why I
but-
left him 3 weeks ago.
And that's why I left him 3 weeks ago. See, if she had been doing this, I think she would have been even more unlikable on the stand.
But this also isn't the first time, so, with both you guys, with the cops out here.
No.
Okay.
I've had to lie to you guys 3 times.
And you shouldn't have to do that, so let's make this maybe the last time.
Now I'm not lying.
And I appreciate that, okay? And you're going, okay?
It's like, why she's so mad at the police officer even at this point. Why is she being so smug and angry at the police officer?
They're gonna come and kill me.
Who's that?
Just like I told you.
Because the police officer says, maybe you shouldn't keep hanging out with this guy. You're in this very toxic pattern where the police keep getting called. And she's so angry and sarcastic about that. That's why I left him 3 weeks ago. Of course, we know that the cycle's still continuing, but...
Anything else because she's taking him down. Put him under the jail.
He's going.
Under the jail.
You need to probably not hang out with each other anymore.
Hello.
I know.
That's
I know,
why I
but-
left him 3 weeks ago.
She says, hello, that's why I left him 3 weeks ago, and gives him this face.
I'm not getting arrested.
No, I'm getting a statement from you. You're not being arrested. So,
Okay, look. I'll come over and see you in like 5.
come on.
Thanks, buddies. They know.
Let's get this done.
They know.
Okay.
Good.
Now, would you come in here so we can do your statement, please? And stop this. Sit down at the table and let's get your statement filled out.
He didn't believe I would ever do it. I'm gonna shut the door. Is that okay?
Sure.
So in terms of, she tries to taunt George, it looks like, tries to taunt when he's actually the one now being taken in the police car, and she's not. Remember, because in the past, both of them were sort of seen as the aggressor and neither pressed charges. This time, he's the one who's getting arrested. She's not. She sort of laughs at him and now is saying, he never thought I would actually do it. Ha!
He didn't believe I would ever do it. I'm gonna shut the door. Is that okay?
Sure.
I mean, it's really cartoonish, that kind of ha. And so it's hard to say whether it's sincere or not. Something like this that's so, in a way, obviously a defense mechanism, right? It is to mask real pain. You know, I think she has real pain, but it's so guarded by this self-righteousness that in a way she is honestly experiencing the self-righteousness, but in a way she has no sort of pure self-experiences. She's living a sort of phantasmal life as this idea of an always righteous, put upon victim. But I would imagine it's a sort of superficial and tenuous state to occupy, you know? And I think it's always really sad when, you know, when people end up in this kind of, when they end up with this kind of wrath, you know, I think it does come from some place of hurt. So maybe that's where me and the forensic psychologist would have in common, this idea that a core wound comes from somewhere, right? I'm not convinced it came from a recent trauma, because it looks to me more like a deep-seated, pervasive pattern of behavior, like a personality, than it does look like a trauma disorder. But a core wound is real hurt, presumably. But the saddest thing is the self-fulfilling prophecy part. You know, the fact that someone with this kind of defense mechanism, who is so terrified of being rejected, so terrified of being imperfect and having people leave them, will push everyone in their lives away preemptively, you know? To prevent that pain of loss, they will insist that they were the ones that they will project onto people the venom that they spew, and then say, look, you're poisonous, you know? And in a way that's safer to them. It's safer to just see the other people as poison than to risk not spewing the venom in the first place and risk that the person just left of their own devices, and rather than because they were spit venom upon. Does that make sense? Now, of course, there is almost a grand finale to this smugness, right? So she goes through the trial. She is ultimately convicted of second-degree murder. She is sentenced to life. And then we find out recently that she sent a handwritten letter to the judge. I am enclosing, please, my complete statement to you and the world as I partially read during my sentencing hearing. So she only got to read part of this during her sentencing hearing. This is too long for this video. But let's see. Let's see what she says. Oh, she's also added to my statement, as a result of your blindness and impartiality, foremost your disgust in me as being an outspoken woman, determined defendant, and proactive client. Right? So her only fault, from Sarah Boone's point of view, her only fault was being too righteous. An outspoken woman, determined defendant, and proactive client. I mean, you can hear that facial expression of smugness. Hoping the next time you put on your listening ears and do not unfairly oppress the next as you have so blatantly done me. You will never admit your many judicial errors, nor will the prosecutors theirs, and I will never admit to what you have wrongfully accused me and judged me as. I am not a murderer. I am a survivor. Okay. So then she defines black robe disease, arrogance in a judge, a slang term. Impartiality is the first duty, but black robe disease gets in the way of this. She's now cites someone from the Simpson trial. So she has these quotes to reference here in her when she's talking about black robe disease. And then there is the worst of judicial ailments, the black robe disease, which is otherwise known as arrogance. And this is a quote from A Practical Guide to Becoming an Emotional Genius. Now, isn't that interesting that arrogance is what she sees in this judge? Yeah. Okay. Kintsukuroi is a kind of Japanese ceramic style, which means to repair with gold. In this tradition, when a ceramic piece breaks, an artisan will fuse the pieces back together again, using liquid gold or gold dust lacquer. So rather than being covered up, the breaks become more obvious, and a brilliant new piece of art emerges from the brokenness. It embraces flaws, weakness, and imperfections, and also teaches the essence of resilience. Every crack in a ceramic piece is part of its history, and every piece becomes more beautiful because it has been broken. This is the wisdom. This is the wisdom of Kintsukuroi, which is a nice sentiment. Right? It reminds me of Hemingway. You know, life breaks everyone, but some become stronger at the broken places. In my wisdom and with all of my repairs, then, now, and ongoing, God is, has been, and will always be my artisan. All of my gold is forgiveness. Oh, okay. So you're going to forgive people. This has held me together, made me shine brighter, and overcome the damage caused by George Torres, the Torres family, the justice system, Judge Woolen and Kranick, Orange County Corrections Department, social media, scoundrel detectives, infamy, defamation, ongoing constitutional rights violation, second-degree murder, forced into being prose. Just as gold is very precious, forgiveness is invaluable. Withholding forgiveness denies your brilliance and adds every greater grief and deeper heartache, irreparable cracks on top of the other. So is she forgiving people? I don't get it. Above all, when you let go of blame, you move forward. My gold begins with George Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked me. So I forgive George. Okay, I forgive George for beating me senseless. I don't know if this is really forgiveness. This seems like she's recounting everything he did wrong. For threatening to kill my friends and the neighbors. So it's a real long list of stuff that George did wrong. So what about... Okay, so she's not... I forgive George for lying. I also Oh. So this is a pretty advanced move, huh? This is the ultimate self-righteousness and smugness is to forgive in this way that is a recounting of all the transgressions, right? And look, I don't know everything that happened in her relationship with George, but in that moment where he was saying I can't breathe and she laughed at him, that is nothing but cruelty. Why not acknowledge that? Why not focus on that part and ask for some forgiveness? It's such an intense justification. This whole thing is justification cloaked as forgiveness. Yeah, that's what it is. For Detectives Copsell and Lowen, I forgive their demonization, lies, blacklisting, coercion, law-breaking, solicitation. Man, I hope she forgives me for this video. It makes no difference. All is forgiven. I forgive the jury truly for being weary from this confusion and dysfunction, also from being hungry and tired and wanting to go home to their families. I understand. Wow, that's awfully big of her. This one, she forgives the jury truly and underlines it, which is basically to admit that the rest of this is not real forgiveness and that in some way she still wants to see the jury as good. She's hoping somehow that they'll come around still, you know, that she was trying to forge this emotional connection with them, I imagine. And she's like, I understand. I think she really believes that she understands that the jury was just confused. You know, she's kind of congratulating herself in that part. You know, I think who she reminds me of in some ways is Miss Havisham from Dickens. What did Miss Havisham say? So Miss Havisham is a character in Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. She was jilted at the altar and then spends the rest of her life insisting on wearing her wedding gown. She has this adopted daughter that she will ultimately use to get revenge on men, but really to get revenge on love. I'll tell you what real love is. It is blind devotion, unquestioning self-humiliation, utter submission, trust and belief against yourself and against the whole world, giving up your whole heart and soul to the smiter, as I did. So the idea is that real love may actually be these things, and that Miss Havisham is saying, I was all of these things once, but in this vulnerable state, I was smote. You know, I gave myself to this man and he destroyed me. I was struck down when I was in that state. And so therefore, never again will I be any of these things. In fact, I will be the opposite. To protect myself against this ever happening again, I will be the opposite. And the opposite of all of these things is smugness and wrath, right? That is essentially the opposite of love. And it is to avoid ever being in that vulnerable state. I think you see those moments of vulnerability with George. You see just glimpses of them when she desperately does want him to come over and he doesn't. And I think that's sort of the last straw. You know, there's this text, like another one bites the dust. she says somewhere. She calls him a spinster several times. But, you know, this is the seething hatred towards George, which it was. It was hatred. It was cruelty. But I think it started from the heart being replaced by ice because the pain was too much. At some point, some pain was too much. Some pain of rejection, some pain of abandonment. And it is... someone smites it, and then there is nothing but vengeance. So why is she like Miss Havisham? Not obviously because she was trying to do anything with, like, she didn't have a daughter or anything, but that what she was trying to do, you know, what she was trying to do was get revenge on the love she had. I mean, the thing that she was tortured by, I submit, was rejection. People don't get that vengeful, that hateful out of nowhere, okay? It is the heart turning to ice, but there was a heart there before, right? Otherwise, there wouldn't be so much ice, you know? All right, I think that's all the time we have. The smug wrath of Sarah Boone, the righteous indignation at the world that has wronged her, and surely it is the world and never herself that is to blame, for that is the only safe belief for Sarah Boone. It would be too painful otherwise, if anything else were true. Thank you for watching.